I want to talk to you for just a moment about the experience of being a parent. And the reason why is because as I talk to you about Alzheimer's and the progression that I have gone through with my mother, I feel like if you have been a parent and you understand what it is to deal with a rebellious or precocious child, a child that wants to know why or simply says, I don't want to do that, I want to do this, you begin to understand how an Alzheimer's patient will begin to appear to you. And the thing that is creating the disconnect is you don't expect this kind of behavior from an adult who at one time in life was the person to whom you actually look to for guidance and for discipline as well as other things. That's the reason why I wanted to kind of set you up for the experience that my sister and I had, along with our spouses, back in March of 2011. It's important for you to understand that the journey that I've been involved in with Alzheimer's and with my mother, the real crux of the journey, the real struggle, the ground zero moment was that moment in March of 2011 that I shared with you on the previous conversation that we had. In that conversation, I told you about Mother being a victim of predators who were in touch with her by mail and by telephone and who were scamming her out of literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a real story. It's a very true story. It's a very clearly and heavily documented story. And I speak about that story at length in the book that I'm currently working on, the forthcoming release of I Never Noticed, My Journey Through Alzheimer's with Mom. Now, having told you about the experience of being a parent, I'm well aware of the fact that many of you viewing this have not the same experiences that Alzheimer's family members have with a loved one, or have had the experiences of being a parent and dealing with children who can be extraordinarily aggravating. But you need to understand the differences. See, with a child, if they're doing something they shouldn't do, they're in a position, at least cognitively, to understand the language of rebuke, the language of scolding, the language of discipline, because they're in a developmental and growing stage. And these are the values that you want to teach them, the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, making good choices rather than making bad choices, and understanding there are consequences for bad choices that can be bad consequences or unintended consequences. But there are also good consequences that can occur when you make good choices or the right choice. Now picture this. The day that we arrived at Mother's house to begin what we call the intervention phase of our relationship, Mother was already, and this remember was over 5 years ago, Mother was already on guard. She was in the throes of Alzheimer's, but it had not robbed all of her judgment skill. So she could figure out very easily, based upon the fact that my sister and her husband, who lived in western Illinois, and myself and my wife, we lived in central Florida. Here we are, out of the blue, sitting in her living room. She's asking the question, why are you here? Why didn't you tell us you were coming? My sister had called and said, I'm coming with Rick. She said, we'll talk to you when we get there. I didn't call Mom. I just showed up. In retrospect, probably not a good idea. Mom would have probably said, what are you coming up for? And we could have told her, there are some problems we need to discuss and we need you involved in it. And it would have been generally true, just not tell her what it is we've learned. And probably she would have welcomed us and hoped that it was a good experience and even thought perhaps maybe she could help with problem solving. But in this particular case, I think we made a mistake. Having said that, here we are now in the living room with Mother. And she wants to know what the situation is, so we just immediately blurt out the problem. The problem is, Mom, you're giving money away. You're giving money away. We found out that you did this. We found out that you did this. Now, as this is going on, I want you to understand you can look at a person's body language. As speakers, we look at body language because body language says a lot about how people are looking at us, perceiving us, and whether they're connecting with us. Mother was not connecting with us on two fronts. One, she was not connecting because she didn't like the idea of her children. Even if we are adults, we're still her children. Mom didn't like the idea of her children telling her there's something going on and you need to get this fixed. And she did not like the idea of us telling her that we were here to assist in correcting what we perceived as a problem, because in her mind there was no problem. This is Alzheimer's in that particular stage of the midpoint, because the person has enough of a decision-making presence in their life to say, I still control things. I know what to do with my money. I know how to drive a car. I know how to make a phone call and do this. This is my responsibility. I have the money. I will do what I want to with my money. And they will even basically conjure up through that portion of their mind that has some degree of creativity remaining in it. They will conjure up plausible, logical explanations for their behavior. But here's the thing you need to remember. As a disciplinarian parent or business person or teacher or any kind of an authority, when they're dealing with you, you look at them as the authority, and if you are cognitively normal, you will hear what they have to say, and you have to make a choice to either agree that they're right or continue to do what you want to do, but that is an act of willful, wanton rebellion. Alzheimer's patients don't respond the same way. They can be very childlike, even childish, but in reality, their rebellion stems from that deeper instinct inside them that goes back to their parental properties, the properties that have dominated their life for so many years because they bore those children, and now those children are their adults, and those children are now, in a sense, scolding them and telling them, you're behaving badly, you're doing something terribly wrong. And no amount of documentation, data, written facts, no amount of details, and no amount of reasoning is going to get that individual to change their mind. That day in March was one of the most emotionally charged train wrecks I've ever been involved in. It was a train wreck, my friends, because I did not do my homework. I really did not understand Alzheimer's. I did not realize how Alzheimer's works in the human mind. And I came up there thinking all I have to do is sit down and reason with my mother and tell her what we have learned. And instead of her continuing to do that, she would say, you're right, I'm glad you told me, I'm glad you're here to protect me. That didn't happen. This was the beginning of a struggle that was on the epic scale of almost a family war. Mother was determined to do what mother wanted to do. Two reasons why. One, because she was mother and it was her money, and technically it was. And number two, Alzheimer's was starting that insidious destructive process of robbing her of her judgment skills. And no amount of reasoning, whether it be pleasant conversation or whether it be firm resolve, was going to alter her thinking. She would do what she wanted to do. This is a common trait in Alzheimer's, and the reason why I bring you these videos and also talk about these in my book as well as in my speeches is to begin to let those of you know who come in contact with this disease or others that affect the judgment skills of people. You need to do your homework. You need to know this now. You need to at least have some platform of preparation, because even with the best information and platform of preparation, the day that you stand in that moment where conflict enters into a relationship that has been a loving relationship for decades, you see something that you never wanted to experience, but I promise you, you will experience, and it will continue to get worse before it gets better. So I will talk the next time about further communication with the Alzheimer's victim and what you must avoid at all cost in order to keep control of the situation as best as possible, because if you don't maintain control, game, set, match, it's over. Thanks for listening. John Morrow saying so long for now.